Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 295. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, December the 10th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. The topic of today's essay, the battle for who sucks the most. And I've used this terminology before because everything is relative in sports. In baseball, for instance, who's the best team out there? Well, all you have to do to make sure that that you win a championship is never lose a game. But there's no team that goes 162-0 through the regular season and then wins each of their playoff matches, sweeps them. Nobody does that. Nobody ever has. Nobody ever will. Okay. So it's not about being perfect, but it's about being better than the others. In other words, everything is relative. And in today's essay, I'm going to talk about, we complain a lot about everything. Okay. And there's complaining that's justified, and there's complaining because you're just a miserable individual, okay? And I'm going to take a few things in the world, in different parts of the world, and in the West, and around here, and in our very local area, and talk about the good and the bad in them, and compare them, relatively speaking, to everything else. And if we do that, I think, while we should always strive for improvement, we should always strive for betterment, we should always look at things and say, okay, how do we make this better the next time? That's always a goal, or should be. You don't want to beat yourself up because we're not as good as we could be. Let's see where we are relative to others, relative to where we used to be, and then use that data, use that comparison to move forward. Before we do that, I did want to, in fact, I'm going to start this podcast on a very positive note, and I'm going to end it on a very positive note. That in the middle is more stuff for the thinking person. So please don't get depressed during this podcast because, again, my goal always is during the podcast is to entertain and inform, in that order. Okay. If I'm informing you, but it's not entertaining, you're going to turn it off and it doesn't really matter. So my trip to North Carolina this week, started out differently than any other trip I've ever had. And what I mean by that is, sure, I got on a plane. I traveled to my destination. I got there on time. But when I got there, I went to the rental car counter, Enterprise, that's who I rent with, and I've actually reported on how Enterprise has really fallen off since Mr. Taylor passed away, the founder of Enterprise Leasing, Enterprise Rental Car. And I've let it be known to those people that I'm not happy with what the company has become, okay? I rent from Enterprise a lot. I spend a lot of money with them. And normally, these companies just smile and say, well, sorry. Enterprise may have stepped up. The last time around, they threw me a little bone. This time around, they threw me a huge bone. Let me tell you what happened this time around. Rented my car, checked in. With Enterprise, the way it works is you check in at the counter. They register you, you then go out to the lot and you get a representative. That representative gets a car for you, which I like because you get a chance to talk to an individual. You just don't get the car they give you, okay? There's usually some flexibility. And normally that flexibility is, okay, I get this car here. It's a black one with 70,000 miles. I'd rather have the white one with 30,000 miles. They'll work with you on that, okay? Sometimes if they really don't have anything that you like, they'll bump you up a little bit, okay? So instead of getting a Nissan Altima, you might get a Nissan Maxima, something like that, okay? Very little bump up. but a bump up nonetheless. Okay. This time, we're walking through the area, and at the Charlotte, North Carolina airport, Enterprise has the Enterprise cars and the Enterprise exotics. In other words, the really cool cars that cost way too much and I would never consider renting. You walk past the exotics to get to the regular cars. So as I struck up the conversation with the agent, I said, what kind of a car do you have for me today? She said, well, what kind of car would you like? And as we're walking by, I said, how about that one? And she said, okay. And I looked at her. I said, that's an Alfa Romeo Stelvio. She said, yes, I know that. I said, I'm in line for a Chevy Malibu or similar. She said, I know that. I said, but you're going to give me the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. She said, if you want it, sure. I said, how much extra is it going to cost me? She said, nothing. I looked at her and says, why are you doing this? She says, we do this every now and then. Do you want the car or not? Yes, I do. Thank you very much. So my car was a 2022 Alfa Romeo Stelvio with 142 miles on the odometer. That sure beat the heck out of the Nissan Altima with $75,000 on the odometer that I had a couple of times ago. Okay. And this car was a joy to drive. It was comfortable. It was cool. It was fast. It was a delight. It kept a smile on my face the whole trip. Now this was not the top of the line Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio with the supercharged Ferrari designed engine. It was not that one. Okay. I didn't get that one, but it had the 2.0 liter turbocharged engine in it, full leather interior, very nice. Again, 142 miles on the odometer, so it was brand new. The car was quick, it was fun, it was comfortable, and I got close to 30 miles to the gallon. So it really made my trip, it kept a smile on my face. I mean, Italian cars are interesting. I've had them before, but they're all kind of alike. Mainly the only other Italian cars I've ever driven are Fiats. Alfa Romeo, I think, is a division of Fiat. Maybe Fiat owns them. I know Stellantis, the parent company, owns them both. But the Alfa Romeo is the souped-up version, the cool car version. The guy with the ill-fitting Italian suit and slick-back hair, he would drive that versus the guy who works in the marketplace. But it was a lot of fun. I loved it. And I thought to myself, man, when I go back to my old car, I'm not sure that I'll like this. Well, when I finished up the trip, turned the car in, the guy said, hey, how was your rental? I said, take a look at it. What do you think? And he laughed. He said, yeah, we just have to ask that question. But I got back on the plane, came home, got back into my Jaguar XE, and I thought to myself, you know what? The Stelvio was nice, but the Jaguar is nicer. When you drive a car with a 3.0 liter supercharged engine that weighs less than a car with a 2.0 liter turbocharged engine, there's still no comparison. So while my Alfa Romeo was wonderful, I'm glad I had it as a rental. I was glad to get back to my Jaguar. So a good trip, good car trip, good sales trip too. But anyway, just a wonderful trip. And sometimes the rental car gods do look down on you in a wonderful way. And this time was no exception. Staying local in the next story, the mayor of St. Louis, Tishaura Jones, she signed an executive order launching a commission to study reparations to black residences of the city of St. Louis. She's assigning a voluntary commission, and she said, and I quote, I look forward to reviewing the commission's work to chart a course that restores the vitality of black communities to our city after decades of divestment. We cannot succeed as a city if one half is allowed to fail. No words on how they're going to go ahead and fund this, okay? Now, what is this? I don't know, but I will tell you that if, as a white guy, if you want to get my dander up, no one word gets me more angry than the word reparations. Now, I understand what reparations are all about. Reparations are to right the wrongs of the past. Okay, which I think those wrongs need to be righted. Translation: any individual who wronged another individual, whether it had to do with race, sex, color, creed, anything, that individual needs to be taken to task. If he broke the law, he needs to be charged. He needs to be tried, and if found guilty, convicted and sentenced, whether it's to a prison term, whether it's to a fine, whatever. So reparations for one person doing another person wrong is nothing new. What is new is saying, okay, these people are one color, those people are another color, so we're going to take from those people and give to these people. That just smacks of racism. Now, I know a lot of black folks out there say, well, black people can't be racist because they're the minority. Well, Tashara Jones, let me share something with you about Tashara Jones that you may or may not know. Does the name sound familiar? Her father was Vervis Jones. Vervis Jones was the comptroller of the city of St. Louis once upon a time, and he went to prison for tax evasion. Now, he pled guilty to tax evasion. That was a lesser charge because he was charged with taking finance money for a campaign and basically putting it in his pocket. Now, he went ahead and pled guilty to tax evasion, a lesser charge. And I think he was given a year and a day in prison or something like that. Okay. So he was the controller of the city, the guy who was in charge of the city's money, and he went to jail for stealing. Okay. Just think about that first. That's her father, who, by the way, ran her campaign, which, if her father was anything like my father, had a big influence on her life. That's who's running the city of St. Louis. Now, that being said, I mean, in my opinion, Tashara Jones is a reprehensible human being, a horrible human being who I don't know why anyone would elect her dog catcher. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not in the city of St. Louis. I don't have the opportunity to vote for her. I didn't elect her. The people did, fair and square. So that's who they want. Fine. But here's the thing about leadership. And I wish that Ms. Jones would understand this. First of all, she's looking for a committee of volunteers to study reparations in the city of St. Louis. If you're listening to my podcast, Ms. Jones, I'm raising my hand. I'd love to sit on that committee and help you out. Of course, you would never want someone like me on that committee. I'm not a member of your city, and I'm not a member of your inner circle. But I'll help you out if you want. Of course, I don't expect to get that invitation. But who is the most powerful person in the city? The mayor. And if you're looking to improve things, and I hate this with leaders, because this is a big thing with a lot of leaders nowadays. The person running the show says, somebody needs to do something about this. Lady, you're in charge. They elected you to do the job. You're that person. You fix the problem. It's your job. Now, if you drive in North St. Louis versus South St. Louis, where the black folks live, where the white folks live, and St. Louis is a segregated city. The black folks live in the north, the whites live in the south. Sure, there's some whites living in the north, some blacks living in the south, but you know what I'm saying. And the south is better looking than the north, okay? It's not as blighted. If Ms. Jones really wants to help out, here's what she can do. It'll solve the problem. It'll help solve the problem tomorrow. Why don't you fix the streets in North St. Louis? Fill the potholes so you don't get a flat tire driving down the street. Take the money. In fact, you're getting close to $500 million from Stan Kroenke because he screwed your stupid football team, or your city because of his football team. Take some of that money and fix the streets. Take some of that money and take the knocked out street lights and repair them. Take some of the money and actually fix the knocked out windows in the schools. Why don't you do that? Why don't you pay some policemen to go in the neighborhoods and make sure the crime rate goes down so that people don't shoot each other and kill each other and rob each other's stores and houses. Why don't you do that? You're in charge. You can do that. Do you think she will? No, I don't either. Now, I've railed on the mayor of the city of St. Louis. And again, who sucks the worst? While Tishaura Jones certainly sucks, she doesn't suck the worst. Story out of Qatar. Okay, 2 stories out of Qatar. Qatar is, what the heck is Qatar? Okay, that's the country, the Arab country who won the World Cup venue for this year. The World Cup's being played in Qatar. And I mentioned last week that anytime you have a Muslim state, and this is not to rag on Muslim people, okay? I'm talking about the Muslim totalitarian states. They're going to do what they want, okay? They already took a bunch of money from InBev and said, yeah, you can serve beer in the stadium. No, we've changed our mind. You just can't. So they just lied and stole, but that's just how they work. There was a reporter, a guy named Grant Wall, who had troubles a day or two ago because he wore a rainbow T-shirt, and he was detained by the authorities because it's against the law to wear a rainbow T-shirt in Qatar, okay? Grant Wall's brother is gay. He wore that shirt in solidarity with his brother, okay? He was given big-time hassle for wearing that. He was detained, okay? He dropped dead yesterday. Now, some people say he was killed by the Qatar police. I don't know that. That's just an accusation with zero merit as of right now, as of 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on Saturday morning, okay? Things may change between now and then. But what is a fact is that many reporters, in fact, one just the other day, were stopped because they were interviewing a guy in a wheelchair. Now, these Muslim totalitarian states not only don't want gays, they don't want drinkers, they don't want handicapped people around. It's almost like Nazi Germany. You've got to be the guy with the beard walking around in your white pajamas and your headdress before you're accepted, okay? The whole place just sucks. And they threatened to take this TV crew's equipment away because they didn't want them interviewing a guy in a wheelchair outside the stadium because it wasn't a good look on the country. Now, to me, it is a good look on the country. Look, you're being all-inclusive. You're letting people with disabilities into your stadium. They don't see things that way. So once again, how bad do we suck here in this country? Not as bad as in Qatar or other parts of the Muslim world. The country of Iran. They killed a guy. They executed a guy because he was found guilty of a crime. What crime was he found guilty of? He was found guilty of waging war on God, whatever that means. On Thursday, Iran said they executed a prisoner during a protest, the protest that has swept the country. The first death sentence that's been known to be carried out among the protesters. Now, the executed man was convicted of blocking the street in Tehran by holding a machete, and he actually injured a member of the Basji parliamentary force, which has been deployed to suppress demonstrations. That's according to the Iranian judiciary news outlet called Mizan. Now, the man identified as Mohsen Shakari was convicted of waging war on God in a charge often brought against political dissidents. 11 people are known to have been sentenced to death for alleged crimes committed during the protests, accused of either waging war on God or corruption of the earth, whatever those two things mean. And that charge usually carries a death penalty. More than 1,000 people have been arrested during the protests and face indictments. That's according to Iran's judiciary. Okay. Again, that's not an independent news service. Iran is raising their hand saying, yep, we got 1,000 people arrested. They're going to face charges. Now, the protests in Iran erupted after the death in police custody of 22-year-old woman. Her name is Masha Amini, who was arrested for allegedly violating the country's strict Islamic dress code. She did not wear a hijab on her head. She was arrested. She died in custody. Okay. Now, the sister of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on Wednesday, wrote a letter that says she cut ties with her brother, who she accused of running a despotic caliphate and not listening to the voice of the the Iranian people. More than 450 protesters have been killed in clashes with security forces since the beginning of the protests. That's according to human rights groups. Now, the Iranian government says about 200 people have been killed, but that includes members of the Iranian security forces. More than 200 members of Iranian parliament in November called on the judiciary to quickly and decisively act against those charged with crimes during the protests, which include offenses carrying the death penalty. Now, Mr. Shikari was convicted in the Revolutionary Court of Tehran, which has been criticized by international human rights defenders for holding closed-door trials in which the defendants aren't able to see the evidence put against them or allowed to pick their own lawyer. Okay? The hearings began on November the 10th. He was tried, convicted, death penalty for crimes against God, or waging war on God. Okay? Even before the protests in Iran began, authorities intensified their use of capital punishment, killing 251 people in the first 6 months of this year. That's according to Human Rights Human Rights Iran and Amnesty International. Now, to be fair, most of these executions were for murder or drug offenses, not for crimes against earth or crimes against God. Now, Iran last year conducted more than 300 executions, second only to China in the total number of executions. Most are believed to be executed by hanging. The executions are disproportionately target ethnic minorities. 1/4 of all people executed in 2021 were ethnic Balochis. Balochis make up 2% of the Iranian population, but 25% of all people executed. Okay. So compare what's going on in Iran and Qatar to what's going on in this country with Tashara Jones. Now, could the West and in general, and U.S. in particular, could we treat minorities more fairly? Yes, I do believe that we could. I do believe that we are. I believe we're making a lot of progress. Are we there yet? Nope, we aren't. We still need to understand better the way minorities feel, okay? Actually, everybody in this country needs to understand better how everyone else feels, which includes minorities understanding how the majority feels, okay? So sometimes they're the ones in the wrong. But that being said, we're nowhere near like those people, okay? We've come so far compared to those types of totalitarian states like Qatar and Iran. And by the way, if you're talking about could we do a better job of treating our minorities fairly, we could. But I will tell you, my opinion is it's more of a class than a color situation, okay? Do minorities get the same treatment as those in the majority in courts? Often not. And I think mainly that's because if you have a public defender versus a hand-picked top-of-the-line attorney, you're not going to do as well. But I'm here to tell you, in my opinion, that's not a color thing. That's a class and money thing. Now, do the majority in this country have more money than the minorities? In general, yes. So it's a money thing. For instance, OJ got off on killing his wife and her boyfriend. Okay? But OJ had money. It wasn't a race thing. It was a class thing. Okay? So again, are we there? Are we perfect in this country? Absolutely not. But by comparison, we suck far less. However, we still suck, okay? And this week, something happened in this country that caused me to say, you know what? Some things never changed, and that has to do with corruption in the government. President Joe Biden gave $36 billion to one of America's largest and most troubled pension funds. $36 billion he gave to a pension fund. The White House is sending $36 billion to buttress the Central States Pension Fund, one of the largest and most troubled funds that managers in the pensions over 350,000 union workers and retirees. Now, the pending announcement back in Tuesday comes after 21 months after President Biden promised $86 billion to troubled multi-employer pensions via a controversial provision tucked inside of the American Rescue Plan. That was one of the biggest things that those who oppose the American Rescue Plan had to do, because it was just a payoff to pension plans for unions. Now, the check from Washington is a note of finality for the decades-long push to shore up these troubled plans, which have fallen on hard times as blue-collar industries, their participation shrinks. Now, critics also charge that mismanagement played an important role in their decline, which it always does. President Biden made the formal announcement Thursday, 2 days ago, in the White House, was flanked by Teamster President Sean O'Brien, AFL-CIO President Liv Schuler, Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh. Okay, this effort has long been championed by figures like Senator Sherrod Brown, Democrat, Ohio, and Representative Marcy Kaptur, Democrat, Ohio. Now, the program is sent to ensure solvency of the fund through 2051. But critics say there's no plan past that, and after 2051, it's going to need another bailout. Now, in 2017, a report found there were 1,400 multi-employer pension plans in the U.S. covering 10 million people, with around 100 of the plans critical and declining status. Now, to try to stave off a collapse of these plans, Biden signed the law to send money to a government agency called the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which partially insures the nation's pensions, but now it's insolvent. Okay. So you form a group, an organization, to make sure that the pensions stay solvent and they go broke as well. Okay. Mismanagement, graft, greed, theft. In total, the Biden administration is sent to provide varying levels of assistance to more than 200 distressed pension plans. That's according to the White House. So they're raising their hands saying this. And they say that's to ensure that workers don't suffer. Okay. Now, the shortfalls quickly piled up after retirees of the Central States Pension Fund, who were mostly Teamsters who hold jobs like truck driving, construction, and food processing, have been facing possible benefit cuts of 60% or more. Now, am I anti-union? No. Have I ever joined a union? No. Do I think unions are bad? No. My father was a Teamster for years. He gets a Teamster pension. In fact, I haven't looked into it, but he may well be in that Central States Pension Fund. But here's the thing. Why do pension plans go bust? Two reasons. The primary reason is normally poor management, okay? We guarantee, the union contract says when you retire, we're going to give you $1,000 a month, okay? But they don't put enough money in the fund to make sure that everybody's going to get $1,000 a month. Or it's invested poorly. Or, like in the case of the railroad pension plan years ago, the union bosses just steal the money. Here's another editorial that I may get in trouble with, but I'm going to go ahead and say this. My opinion is union, organized crime, same in many cases, okay? Ask Jimmy Hoffa. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You can't. He disappeared. But pensions go bad whether they're managed by a union, an individual, a fiduciary, the mafia. Pension plans go bad because of poor management and or theft. Case in point, my 401k, which is in fact my pension, okay? It's down substantially. Now why? Well, here's the real reason why. I obviously didn't manage it as well as I could have. I decided to do this instead of that. And it hurt me, okay? So here's my question. Where's my bailout? I'm not where I should be. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I need to be to call it a day with the day job, okay? So where's my bailout? Well, I'm not going to get a bailout. Too bad, so sad. Go tell your dad. Now, and by the way, I'm okay with not getting a bailout because I'll raise my hand and say, look, if I'd have done my due diligence a little better or did this instead of that, I wouldn't be in the case that I'm in. It's my fault. I'll make it better. Now, my opinion is this whole pension bailout, okay? Here's why I believe it happened. Remember a week or two ago when the railroads said, look, we're going to go ahead and strike. And Biden said, nah, you're not going to strike. I'm going to pass a law, sign into into sign a law. I don't know if it was a vote. I think it was a vote in Congress and Senate, and then Biden signed it. It wasn't not an executive order, but he signed an order telling the railroad guys, look, F you got to go back to work, even though they voted to strike. And their union bosses went along with it, so there was no strike. And I thought to myself, what's going on here? Biden has been pro-union all his career, and he just stuck it to the railroad workers, in my opinion. Well, here it is. Here's the payback. I'll do this if you do that. So the railroad workers were done dirty because the Teamsters were done right. That's how it is, in my opinion. Now, again, that's my opinion. Tell me I'm wrong. I didn't think you would. By the way, government, unions, gangsters, they aren't the only ones sucking nowadays. How about the auto industry? Okay. I read this story, that I read this thing, and I thought to myself, you people are horrible. The auto dealers are starting to cry poor, okay? Because the auto dealers, they see softening demand now among higher interest rates as having their outlook be uncertain. Ooh, not guaranteed. In fact, a survey of 1,000 dealers, auto dealers, say that their outlook on the market is the lowest it's been in 5 years. Now, for nearly 2 years, auto dealers have been focused on getting more cars on their lots amid a severe inventory crush. Anybody who's looking for cars knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now they're worried about how quickly they will be able to get them off of their lots. Slim selections at dealerships since mid-2021 created a backlog of consumer demand. Now, at many dealerships, this trend has meant that most vehicles arriving from the factory are pre-sold. In other words, if you've been to a dealer to look at cars, okay, we've got 3 to look at. Oh, and by the way, they're all sold. But as the new vehicle stocks are slowly replenished, as the supply chain improves, some dealers are saying that there's signs of uncertain economic outlook and higher interest rates, and they're going to start dampening demand. Okay, now a quarterly survey of more than 1,000 U.S. dealers conducted between October 25th and November 7th and released this week by Cox Automotive show that the outlook for car sales is the gloomiest it's been since they started the beginning in 2017, 5 years. Now, the majority of dealers who responded view the current market for selling cars as weak, which I don't understand that at all, okay? Now, overall, they cited the economy and interest rates as the top 2 factors holding back their business, and the lack of inventory ranking third. Now, since mid-2021, limited inventory has ranked as their top concern. Now, this incredible period that has produced record profits for many dealers is quickly turning into a more worrisome period, and that's according to Jonathan Smoke. He's the chief economist for Cox Automotive. Now, the findings reflect uncertain times in the car business. Signs of possible recession typically rattle the cyclical auto industry, which normally gets hit hard in an economic downturn. But despite the cloudy economic outlook, the market dynamics have fueled strong profits by dealers, and automakers over the past 2 years remain largely intact. And said relatively scarce vehicle supply, the backlog of consumers who are in the market for a car willing to pay top dollar, and as a result, some auto industry's executives say the market remains healthy. Now, rising interest rates are one of the biggest threats to consumer demand. Dealers and automotive executives admit that. In fact, in the Cox survey, about half the dealers who responded cited interest rates as a problem, compared to just 3% of them who responded that way last year. Well, sure, last year interest rates were near zero. Now they're about 5%. Of course it's more of a problem, because before it was a zero problem, okay? Now, meanwhile, a fall off in value of trade-ins has started to erode new vehicle demands. So as more used cars get onto the market, used car prices drop. So when you trade your new car in for a used car, it's not worth as much, but the dealers still want top dollar for their new car, but they won't give you as much of a trade-in, okay? Now, here's a number that's interesting. The number of vehicles on dealership lots or en route to stores in November, just last month, rose 57% from a year earlier to 1.6 million. That's according to the research firm Ward's Intelligence. Now, still, that level is roughly 1/3 below the historic norm. Okay, so inventory levels are still 1/3 lower than normal, but they're losing their mind because they're higher than they were before. Okay, now auto executives have said they're not likely to boost consumer incentives, which have hovered near historic lows, until vehicle inventory available improves dramatically. Average new price in November for a new car, $45,872. Okay, that's just a few $100s off the record-setting price in July. Okay, so you're a couple $100s off the record-setting price in July, and you're losing your mind, saying the sky is falling. Now, Jack Hollis, who's the executive vice president of Toyota Motor Corporation, their North American business, said the U.S. car auto dealers have the equivalent of about 4 days of vehicles on the ground, 4 days of inventory, where normally they carry about a month's worth of inventory. Okay. Now, there's still a huge demand for new vehicles, he says in an interview last week, but the inventory is increasing. Now, car shoppers for nearly 2 years have expressed their frustration and lack of availability and griped about dealers charging above manufacturers' suggested prices. In fact, some say they've expanded their searches out of state to avoid paying more than sticker price. Now, in November, this is telling, okay? This is probably the most telling statistic of this story. In November, that's just last month, about half of new vehicle buyers were paying more than sticker price. Okay, that's down from a peak of 64% in June. That's according to J.D. Power. Think about that. Half of new vehicle buyers are still paying more than sticker price. And the dealerships are losing their mind because it used to be 64%. Now, I've been buying cars for a long time, friends. I've been buying cars for 45 years. I've been buying new cars for 45 years. I've been buying cars for almost 50 years, if you include used cars. I have never paid sticker price on a car in my entire life. Never. Ever. Not once. And the auto industry is losing their mind because half of the buyers are now not paying more than sticker price. You'll never sell a car to me. And here lies the problem on how business looks at trends, okay? Again, still more than half of your customers are paying more than sticker price, but it used to be 64%. My God, the people paying more than sticker price is down 14%. The sky is falling and we may have to close the doors. That's insane. And that's a big problem with industry, with business. When you're down 10% from record profits, you're ready to fire everybody and close the doors. Again, when you're down from record profits, the auto industry has had record profits. They're selling less cars than they were 2 years ago and making more money than they were 2 years ago. Okay? That tells you something. That translates to your price is too high, friends. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I've always done. Like I said, I've been buying cars for close to 50 years. I've never paid sticker price, ever, not once. I paid half of sticker price one time for a brand new car. This was in 2009, during 2008, end of 2008, during the crisis when they were closing up Pontiac and Saturn. I bought a new Saturn and I bought a new Pontiac, brand new. The Pontiac I got for less than half price because they were just liquidating them. That's when GM had the fire sale. That's when I buy cars. Car companies are not going to fleece me. Now, people will say, well, you just fleeced the car company, Strong. You know what? If I say I'll buy your car and I'll pay this, and they sell it to me, how is that my fault? In fact, I've made the statement before. How do you know you've paid the right price for a car? If they sell you the car and then give you the finger as you're walking out the door, you know you got the best price. I don't buy it that they're selling it at a loss. They will never sell it at a loss. They're selling it because they want to move steel. That's the way it works. We're looking for a new car for the trophy wife, and we'll buy it as soon as they start crying more, when the auto industry goes down, when the prices go down, when I can get my price for the car. That's when I'll buy a car. All business needs to stop being so greedy. And I'm not saying profit is bad. What I am saying is, if you're making more money than God, fine. But when you start making just the same money as God and you believe the sky is falling, don't come crying to me, because I'm not listening. Okay, last story. And I promised I would end on a positive note, okay? And this is a positive note. And it has to do with the energy supply. It has to do with climate change. It has to do with pollution. As I've said before, I'm not a climate change denier. Climate is definitely changing. The world is definitely getting warmer. Global warming is a real thing. Now, how much of that is because we drive SUVs instead of electric cars? I don't know. Probably none. Maybe a little. I don't know. But what we do need to do is look towards burning less fossil fuels. We need to look towards burning more clean energy. We need to look towards being more efficient. And here's a perfect way we can do it. The highest prices in years have made producing natural gas profitable just about every place, okay? But with companies trimming their emissions and new tax breaks for the waste-to-energy projects, the new green projects, some of the most lucrative places to extract gas, natural gas, is not from fracking locations, but garbage dumps. Now, down on the western slope of the Keystone Sanitary Landfill, knots of pipes, membranes, and compressors draw fumes from within the mountain of rotting trash, and it separates the methane gas from other gases and pumps it into Pennsylvania's natural gas grid. Now, the trash-fed gas plant called Project Asahi is the largest of its kind, producing, get this, enough natural gas each day to fuel more than 65,000 homes. Now, it's a model for what its builder, Archaea Energy, is doing. It's a model for the whole country. The daily seep of gas is a fraction of what bursts from the shale wells. Okay, so this is not going to solve the problem. I mean, but still, it's substantial. Archaea, that's the company. Archaea's ambitions are getting a boost from British Petroleum. Okay, British Petroleum is the largest bet yet on the biogas bonanza. And it's buying these places up because they realize the benefit. In fact, they're partnering with companies like Waste Management, who's North America's biggest landfill operator, and they're investing $825 million in gas projects in their properties. NextEra Energy, they're a leading renewable power developer, said it will pay $1.1 billion for a group of landfill gas facilities. Shell, in addition to BP, agreed last week to buy a European biogas producer for nearly $2 billion. So when BP closes this deal in the coming weeks, it will be for a big payday for Archaea's founders. These guys were college buddies who got out of Wall Street, decided to get into the garbage business, okay? BP executives say they will apply the energy giant's financial heft and trading know-how to lift Archaea's annual earnings to $1 billion within the 5 years. Now, we're looking forward to take it to the next level, says David Lawler, who heads BP's U.S. onshore oil and gas business. It's very material to the company. Now, landfills are some of the most prolific sources of biogas, but they're not the only one. Dairy farms, hog farms, wastewater treatment plants, all produce methane gas, okay? And what is methane gas? It's natural gas, same thing, okay? And it's created by microorganisms called Archaea, same as the name of the company, by the way, okay? Archaea microorganisms break down the waste, and the product is methane gas. Now, when BP agreed to buy Archaea, the company, not the microorganism. A benchmark U.S. natural gas prices, they're around $7 per British thermal unit, BTU. While the value of renewable resource credits associated with methane was about $33. That meant gas from Assai could sell for about $40 per BTU. Now, our vision of the landfill is that it really should be thought as a renewable energy facility, not a dump, said Archaea Chief Financial Officer Nick Stork. He's joining BP along with his founders. Now, in 2015, they got wind of a landfill near Pittsburgh and cashed in their 401ks. That's the two guys who started Archaea. Cashed in their 401ks for a bond and everyone thought they were crazy. They went ahead and figured a way to quickly make conversion equipment. They stuck reclaim units into this landfill, and they made money. In fact, Archaea's idea of a standard design for of a traditionally custom processing plant, they did this so they could build it cheaper and faster instead of 20 a year instead of 2. So they found a quicker way to build these reclaim plants. So they made the reclaim operations on smaller landfills more feasible. Now, here's the big thing, okay? By the world taking a landfill and turning it into a natural gas resource is not going to save the world, but it turns a negative into a positive. And here's the thing. It's a very steady, reliable source of methane gas. As long as the landfill continues to rot the waste, they're going to get natural gas. And what is business like more than anything? Predictability. Okay. And it has to do with, okay, we're going to have landfills. We've always had landfills. We're going to have landfills for a long time. We're a consumer type economy. This stuff has to go somewhere. If it goes into a landfill and we can turn that landfill into a source of natural gas, there's a positive. Because we have landfills, we need energy. Landfills create natural gas. So let's put these two together and succeed. A small success, but a success nonetheless. Not unlike a plan that I read about. In fact, I didn't read about it. I heard it on a podcast. It was a guy who has a unique recycling plan that's very controversial, but if you think about it, it works. I'm a big fan of recycling. However, when you separate all your plastics, for instance, and your paper, most of that ends up going into the landfill anyway. It's hard to separate. It becomes contaminated. It's just a big mess. So we spend all this time and effort separating it. It gets mixed up and just goes into the landfill anyway. So it'd be better off if we just threw it in the trash anyhow, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to make us feel good. Here's one solution. Separate and recycle aluminum, steel cans, glass, okay? Go ahead and recycle those. Everything else, waste paper, plastics, pizza boxes, etc., just burn them for electricity. Now, in theory, if you separate all the stuff and recycle it, it's better. But in reality, this stuff doesn't get separated and recycled. Now they say, well, we used to send it to China and they used to do it. Did they? Did they take the time to do it? Or did they just burn it in their coal plants? I don't know. A lot of times the best solution is the easiest solution. In other words, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you separate all the recyclables, put them through the right stream, everybody who participates puts things in the right bin. In theory, on a scale of 1 to 10, that's going to give you an 8 of return. The reality is that never happens. So you go from an 8 to about a 1. Why not make it easier on everybody and go from a 1 to a 3 and just burn it? Is 3 better than 8? No. But we've never achieved 8. And there's no model that shows 8 of ever happening. Right now it's at 1. Let's make it easier on everybody and turn it into a 3. And that goes into my whole mantra. We'll never be perfect. We'll never be there. We will never be the perfect society. But that should never be our goal. Our goal should always be, let's be better. Our goal should always be, let's not suck the most. In fact, let's work real hard on sucking less. And then in 10 years, we'll say, look, we don't suck as bad as we did 10 years ago. And right now, we're kind of on that track. I don't think we suck as much as we did 10 years ago. If we do things right, 10 years from now, we'll suck less still. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. Send me your email address. I will send you a link to the podcast. You can download and listen to it at your leisure. Send me emails. I love to read them. I love to respond to them. And please, please, please share the podcast with your friends, with your family, with people who you think might enjoy the podcast. Share the love, expand the podcast, and I will tell you thank you in advance for that. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.